Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. I am your host, Michael Perry, and today I'm joined by Master Derek Thompson of the Ashla Knights. Say hi, Derek.
Hi.
Today we will be discussing suffering. We will be addressing what creates suffering, what can we learn from suffering, and the importance of it in our own lives and in the world. So, Master Thompson, what would you say is suffering? What creates suffering?
Suffering is one of my favorite topics because very few things in our construct of life does a principle or aspect of philosophy, if you or ideology, philosophy, whatever you want to call it, wherever you want to pack it in there, has such an anchor with our character, behavior, how we spiritually comport ourselves, like suffering. Suffering is utterly sublime to me. And to answer your question, what creates suffering? Suffering is the exhaust of life. That's how I would describe suffering. It
Okay.
is the exhaust that's spit out of the engine of life. It is the essential, inescapable remainder, constant remainder, proof positive that you are living, you are testing the boundaries of life, you are making decisions that are good and bad. You're going forward in life, and the proof of one of several proofs of this is suffering, suffering, glorious suffering. Now, please do not think like suffering for suffering's sake is a good thing. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you endure, when you persist, when you do not give up, that type of suffering that comes from that reality of effort and then perhaps resolution. And it's even better if that resolution is a powerful, a positive one, because that's character building right there. Suffering, yeah. Let me stop right there. It's just, yeah. So back over to you. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I love the energy on the topic because I think it's something that so many of us dread discussing. I think
Right.
most people go through life trying to avoid suffering and in turn suffer for it.
Yep.
I mean,
Yes.
you look
Yeah.
at the noble truths of
Yeah.
Buddhism.
Yeah.
I mean, the first noble truth is life has inevitable suffering.
That,
And I think suffering, in my opinion, is one of the most beautiful aspects of human life. I'm right there with you with just how necessary it is
mm-hmm.
to be, how necessary suffering is to life because only in suffering do we find ourselves.
That's
Only
right.
in suffering can we cultivate the character traits that we are lacking. And we see so much suffering in the world and it weighs on our hearts. It's what calls to action. You see it all through history. Suffering is the bread and butter of the furnace that forges mankind into who
Mm-hmm.
they're meant to be.
I would agree with that. You know.
And
Okay.
when it comes to what creates suffering in the world, there's so many things that can be pointed at that create suffering. Justin, one of his greatest teachings was he taught me about how the three major things that cause suffering in the world is attachment, judgment, and expectation. And I've spent a lot of time reflecting on this lesson, and I see at the root of it, and what I think maybe at the root of almost all suffering is control. What are your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on that?
I this is suffering. Suffering is like just when you unpack it, the depth. Like where do you? So I guess I would have to say first. Let me put this out there before we go any further. As a Jedi, as a practicing Jedi in the real world, if Jedi had a noble truth, a pillar of strength, if one of the three pillars, if there was a fourth pillar of strength for the Jedi ideology, it would have to be suffering. That's how important it is because you said a moment ago, only when you're tested do you find yourself. And yeah, that's not always, I would agree with that. there's other ways to find out a little bit about more about yourself that's not non-invasive, but suffering is the best way. You as a person, as people, we go through life every day. We interact with our friends. We go to work. We drive our cars. We have our moments of our emotional moments throughout the day, our angers, our happinesses, our smiles, our frowns, all these things, everything, even that happy moment, everything that gives us a moment of happiness and pause. The suffering is the origination of that. Like, if there is breath, the air coming, the intake is, as we live, as we go forward, as we interact with each other, suffering comes. It's an automatic thing. We, like you said something about Justin, the three truths he taught you. You meet somebody, you're forming a judgment. You're establishing an expectation of how this person is going to be, what their character and their behavior is going to be like in general and toward you. What was the other thing too? It was
Attachment.
attachment, and then we have our attachment as to how we expect these interactions to go. And when they don't go that way, we feel a little hurt. We feel a loss. There's a small little inkling of a suffering there. Our ego's bruised because we didn't correctly call out this situation. We didn't manage this. We didn't have control over this. We didn't have the right control over this. So you did not get your serotonin fix from having successfully negotiated this thing. So now you have a moment where you suffer for a little bit. And it's not a physical suffering; it's an egotistical suffering. It's not a spiritual suffering.
Yeah.
It's a mental thing. It's a mental thing. That's why I said, like, everything we do in life, everything we do, from having our cereal in the morning to putting on our pajamas to go to bed, suffering is the exhaust from everything we do. Everything we do, and it's unavoidable. It's unavoidable, and people are constantly trying to find new ways to avoid it. People are constantly trying to counsel people into just quote unquote being happy and adopt a static state of happiness, and you'll be fine. Life, forget the world. Life does not work like that. There is not a static state of happiness.
No.
There's a static state of suffering, though. And
Yeah. No, I was one of those people who lived in toxic positivity my whole life. And I avoided so many lessons through keeping my head in the clouds and not looking at the world burning around me. So that's
ex-
beautifully said.
I appreciate that. And I'll end that with saying this: you gain nothing in learning on your road of life if you're constantly trying to ferberize or find comfort or avoid or whatever. That's not how life is supposed. You're alive to experience. You're alive to partake. You're alive to experience joy and happiness, suffering and loss. You're supposed to have these things. They're supposed to be. I wouldn't go as far as saying balance. I don't really, as a Jedi, I don't really believe in balance. I believe in a toggle. You're supposed to have that toggle of suffering and joy. So it never ceases to amaze me when you turn the TV on and there's somebody selling constant happiness, whether it's some pastor or it's some reality star or it's some elixir someone's pushing on the internet or it's some whatever
Yeah.
it is. You know what I mean? But yes, please, Mike, you take it away.
Well, and you actually brought up a point I've never really considered too much. But what would you say is the difference between spiritual suffering and egotistical suffering? Because I think it's so easy to get lost in the translation there. You got me thinking on that. That there's
Well,
truth to that because
you hit the nail on the head, my friend. You bingo right there. What is the difference between egotistical suffering and spiritual suffering? You can't tell. You know why you can't tell? I'll tell you why you can't tell, in my opinion. When we decide to live, when we, whatever that process is, whatever your background, whatever your philosophical, religious, mythological teachings, whatever that is, that's you. Whatever tells you or teaches you how life begins before the womb. I'm just going to go ahead and just say, just for conversation's sake, to live, when we choose to live, we enter these vessels without ego. There is no. We may have lived other lifetimes. We may have a a trail of experiences that is timeless. But every single time I have
Yeah.
to, it's a fact because many of us would be remembering our past lives. When you hop into when you begin a new journey in a new body, you do not remember what came before that. You have impressions, you have some, maybe some recollections in your REM sleep or whatever. You might have a dream or something. You might find someone's presence soothing or familiar or comforting. You may have this instant
There might be
reaction.
a little temperament there.
Right, or vice versa. They're you might dislike somebody right from, like, I don't know what it is about this dude, but I can't stand him. Whatever it is, we enter this body without an ego. The minute the air of the outside world hits our lungs and we start to cry, the minute we hear that friggin' sound in your own ear that something's wrong, you're crying, which makes you cry even more, your ego starts, the clock on your ego development starts right there. What happens? You cry. Someone's picking you up, holding you, trying to comfort you. For the longest time, all you know is comfort. All you know is provision. All you know is that hopefully you're safe and secure and loved, and you're just swaddled with all of this giving and here and taking care of whatever. I remember I want to say I was 5 or 6 years old, and I remember having an instance where I remember I said this to myself. I said, I guess I'm not a kid anymore because no one's talking to me like a kid anymore. No one's treating me like a kid. No one's in awe of my cuteness anymore. I don't get the, oh my God, he's so cute. Oh my God. No, nobody, you get to a certain age where you're just a kid. Now you're annoying. Now you just like, go get me the remote control, get me a beer, and get the hell out of here. You get to that point, and I remember little things like that. I don't remember the whole day, but I remember feeling, and it hurt my ego. It hurt my ego, and I remember taking, like, doing the math on that. I'm like, why? Like, what is this thought? Like, why do like? I remember feeling inside like angry. I remember feeling sadness at the same time. I felt alone. Like, I know this sounds like really, like, but I remember feeling these little instances. And then you go to grade school and you deal with your teachers, and you have a teacher that doesn't like you, or an aide, or other kids, and you constantly feel like these, and then you start to develop anxiety. That's when you know that your muffler is like faulty in life, because now you're a little kid with anxiety issues, and now your body physiologically is acting out that you're probably peeing in class. You're too scared to ask your teacher to go to the bathroom because your teacher's mean to you, so you go in your pants. So now people are making, see how this just, everything just snowballs from 5 years old on. It's just a snowball effect. These things, these stimuli, these experiences, very few of them are very good. They start to shape and mold, and then your personality starts to bud from that. All right, but you're not an adult yet, and
Yeah.
you can't.
Oh man, I tell you what, I've done a lot of research around this. Like what you're talking about, as far as when we're born and there is no ego until the
Yep,
air hits us and we start developing ourselves. I mean, I
yep.
truly believe we are pure spirit when we come into this
When we
world.
come into this world, we
And
are pure energy. Exactly.
yep, and it's that's first 7 years is with all these psychologists and all these people in the spiritual field are saying. It's like the first 7 years are when you cultivate your character and who you are, and that goes for self worth, that
Yep,
goes for how you approach life. That first 7 years are what create your character, and it's all these experiences you're talking about. Whether it's people gawking at you so because you're so cute,
yep.
or your older brother picking on you in the crib. You know what
I
I mean?
I
Like,
do.
and you're hitting the nail on the head.
And
There's
and
this spiritual leader. I've read all his books, and his name is Michael Singer, and he talks about how the whole we're pure light when we come into the world, and what causes, in his eyes, what suffering is we create references, And it's through
Yep.
every little experience we have, we
Yep.
decide this is
Yep.
good, this
Yep.
is
Yep.
bad, I
Yep.
like this, I don't
Yep.
like this.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And was that the tangent you
It's,
were
I
going to
was
go down?
exactly,
Oh,
that's exactly where I was going. Yep. Yep. So, and if I could jump on that real quick to answer your question. So
yeah.
it's interesting that the professionals say 7 years. I was thinking 5, but I'll take 7 because 7 works. And what you said is exactly, this is the problem with parents today. This is why, and this is, I have a very unique look on life as a Jedi, and I know people look at, like, hear some of my things and they're like, that's actually very negative, very dark. It's really not. It's really not. The difference between darkness and accepting the reality of things is exactly that.
Yeah.
It's exactly the reality of life is what it is, and trying to
Yep.
reshape it and remold it so it's comfortable for you. Good for you for trying to do that. It's a futile exercise, and it's another sojourn into disappointment and, I guess, suffering, because it can't happen. That's not how life works. Life is, you're supposed to be in pain. We are supposed to be. This is I wouldn't call this hell on earth, but this is hell's front lawn. This is hell's front lawn, okay? And we're stepping on the yeah, and we're pissing in the grass basically. And that's the reality of it. We're supposed to be in fear. We're not built to be gods. We're not built to be dinosaurs or trolls or giants. We're not like metahumans, or we're not actual force wielding Jedi Knights of cinema. We're human beings. We're frail creatures. We're flesh and blood. We're supposed to feel these things so we don't feel them constantly over and over again, because that's what life is: big circles moving forward,
Oh
circles,
man,
circles, circles moving
that
forward.
right there is a great point. That
Right?
that right there, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest parts of suffering. We go through hard times and we do everything we can. All those emotions, the grief, the sadness, the
Yep.
anger, we shove all that crap down,
Yep.
and that slowly converts into our unconscious and creates our worldview
There it
projection,
is.
right?
Boom. There it
And
is.
judgments, right?
Yep. That's exactly, and this is why I say to parents, I don't do a lot of parental counseling, but I got a lot of friends who are parents, and they have, they're entering like that realm where their kids are just, their personalities are starting to like be dominant now. And nobody's having, the cute days are over. The lovable photo album days are over. Now I got for a son, I got a train wreck for a daughter, and the kids are like seriously under 10 years old. So they get upset because they don't have control over I'm the adult. I'm supposed to be in control of this. Okay, yeah, okay, sure, a little bit of control, but you gave up that control the minute you didn't realize that the first 5 to 7 years that you are rearing these children, you're shaping and molding your headache for the future.
Yes.
That is the thing. It's not the kid's fault, it's your fault. Like, and parents don't take this seriously because the world is full of vacations, porn, weed, drugs, working double time, overtime, trying to get up to Canada, trying to get down everybody's got a thing. Everybody's too busy trying to make photographable memories than to actually be in the moment and synthesize the reality and the truth of life, and guide and shape and mold your kids the first few years of their life so their ego is a healthy one. And if they go
Right.
astray on their own when they get older, then that's up to them. But you did your job in feeding that ego enough I wouldn't say negativity, I would say reality. You gave that ego enough reality and enough of non-reality, like like birthdays and parties and experiences of joy and happiness, to see the contrast, so they can take that math and they can process themselves as they grow up and experience for themselves. We don't do that. We're too busy. Okay, I got things to do. Go upstairs to your room and play your video games. Oh, okay, we're going here. We're going there. Let's get this. Oh, little league practice. This practice. That practice. This. they think that having somebody told people keep your kids busy and occupied and keep them and just keep them moving and they won't sell drugs and they won't do drugs and they won't get in trouble. And yeah, sure, you want to keep them, you want to keep their mind stimulated, but you also want to stimulate their minds with knowledge, with teachings,
Yeah.
with good things, with healthy things. Like, let me show you, let me talk to you about the
With
world.
love and quality time.
Exactly, exactly. So to answer your question, based on that, to answer your question, which one was what the hell was the question again? was oh, the
No,
difference.
I
Oh, no,
think
I
we
got
kind
it.
of
No,
got into a
no,
tangent there, but it's a good one.
no, I got it. So the difference between suffering, egotistical suffering, and
Oh,
spiritual
yes.
suffering. Egotistical suffering is going to, it's sad that it does, but it starts pretty much not far from the crib. That is the suffering of humankind. That's the inevitable result of decisions and feelings and stimuli on the physical body. The suffering spiritually, unfortunately, we don't get to experience that until we're dead, and no one's come back to educate us and say, well, in retrospect of my life, this is what I came up with, and this is how I feel about it. And that seems to be the same with a whole bunch of other ghosts that I was in the cafeteria in heaven with, and this is what they all talked about. The spiritual suffering, people think, oh, I'm confused about my denomination. I'm confused about this. And I can't make a decision about like what path I want to walk. And I can't stay on a path. I go from Buddhism to Hindu, from Hindi to Christianity, from Christianity to pagan, from pagan to Wiccan, from Wiccan to, and I'm spiritually like torn apart. I'm suffering spiritually. You have no idea what it means to suffer spiritually. There's no frame of reference in on this planet for anybody to say I've suffered spiritually. We can't know because the ego of humankind, the human condition in this body as it is consumes all that. All we can do is try like we do to be more aware, more conscious, find more ways to bring the depth up and out as best we can. And that's the sad, that's how I feel about it. That's the sad thing. Spiritual suffering, the reality of that, I think comes when we're out of the body and we're long gone and we've gone through our period of shedding the worldly ego and we return back to the light and then we can process through that. And unfortunately, we don't come back with those memories. So that's that.
But out of curiosity, have you ever heard of Erickson's psychosocial stages?
No.
So this is a big thing out there in psychology where in different years we're going through different developmental stages. And I'm not going to get too far into it. I have a ton of research I've done around it for a book me and my fiance are working on.
Cool.
But in old age, every stage of life, you have a certain dilemma or you're finding what path you're going to take. And
Yep.
in old age, the battle you fight 65 to death is integrity versus despair.
Hmm. That's interesting.
It's because of, yeah, because at that age, that's when you look back and you look at your contributions to your family, you look at the contributions to society and your community, and then there's the despair of, what have I done with my life?
Right.
Because you were kind of touching on that a little bit. And I do think that there's a grain of, we all can run from our problems and run from doing more with our lives, or there's going to come a point where you have to stop and look back and you have to face the reality of, was I someone who did something, which is egoic. It is totally egoic. What was my contribution? But us as a society, we are fueled by, how can I provide to the world? And some people, it can be a more selfish, small one. Some it's, how can I make the world a better place? But you will look back and you will look at that and you will, I
Yeah.
think that's when possibly what you're referring to, and I know you're saying after you leave the body and you really look back, but I think there's a good chance it happens in old age when we actually start that process
That's a problem.
of evaluating.
Yeah, I go with that. I'll amend to that. Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, and as I'm listening to you speak, you know, somebody's probably listening to this and they're saying, well, Derek, sometimes people hit a period in their life when they're much younger and they reflect and they can, turn away from the path that they're on. And see, that's not spiritual suffering. Again, this is
No.
all right. This is all suffering of the spirit. This is all suffering of the mind, the soul, not the soul, the mind and the ego. And, but here's the thing though, and I'll use myself as an example. I was, as Eddie Murphy says, I may have fractured a law or two when I was a kid, right? So I may have fractured a law or two when I was a kid and wound up in a program or two, if you will. And for me, I grew up in a very, I wouldn't just say tough. It was a bad neighborhood. It was a very bad neighborhood. And I remember there was a day I remember I was walking and I knew I was going to be leaving my home because I got into some trouble and I was going to have to go to a facility for like 30 or 60 days. And it was not going to be a good place. It was for really bad kids, right? And I remember, besides being sad and scared and upset that the system was against me, not taking responsibility for the fact that I did this to myself and this is the result of my,
Right.
right? I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I don't want the rest of my life to be this. I don't know what is available to me in the future, but I know that this is not what I want. And I wish I could say it was that experience, but that changed it. But that was the beginning of a turnaround.
One thing I think I really want to bring up here, because this is kind of like the meat of what I really want to touch on with suffering, is when we go through life and we experience suffering, so often it's easy to blame, to judge. I mean, I know I spent most of my life trying to save people from their problems. And it'd be, I always had this almost resentment of why won't you take the high road? You see the path. I'm helping you through this. And I started to realize as I went through the training with Justin and I was going through my dark night of the soul per se,
Yeah,
that I had to step back and realize one, the savior in me, the one trying to help everybody, was not acting from a place of making the world a better place. It was trying to get my own, it was how I knew how to get love. It was self-sacrifice, self-abandon,
yeah,
and therefore I am valued and validated. But the one thing I want to touch on with this is someone listening to this is struggling, have a horrible job and a bad relationship. If their life is going down the crapper, and it's so easy to look outside of ourselves and let our anger frustrate everything around us. But if we do not acknowledge what you
yeah.
were just talking about, if we do not acknowledge the part we play in our own suffering,
That's right.
that is the wrong path
That's
because we
yeah.
can get so caught up.
when
Go ahead.
you do not take responsibility for your own machinations, your own thoughts, you know, your own ego, I guess I'll say. When you don't take
Yeah,
responsibility
good.
for
Well
that,
said.
yeah, if you don't take responsibility, you don't manage your ego properly, you don't take responsibility for your share, your part, it breeds, you become almost sociopathic.
Yeah,
It's and I hate to use that word. There's another word I want to use and I can't. It's escaping my mind. So, but it's close to it. You become detached. You become like phased from reality. Like like everything around you and everyone around you is the enemy. And this is like people listening take this with a grain of salt because I am like working off of memory here, but I remember in college taking like some token psychology class. And if I have this correct, I should actually have a laptop right here. If I have this correct, I think it's called solipsism. Do you familiar with this solipsism? Solipsism, if I'm
no.
saying it right, I'm just trying to open up a page here. So, okay, that's not going to work. I think solipsism is if you were a brain, right? If your existence was that of a brain, You have no legs, you have no torso, you have no arms, you have nothing. You have just a brain and two eyes. That's it. Just two eyes. They said that you would adopt a thinking of nothing is real around you. You can't touch anything. You can't interact with anything. You can't eat or drink or smell. You can see stuff. You have two eyes sitting on your brain, this giant brain, but you can't experience anything. So how is anything real? Anything that you see is pretty much your imagination. Not really your imagination, but it's a construct that you can't even begin. There's no example around you that somebody is interacting with this three-dimensional, this four-dimensional world. All you see are the things. So you have no concept, you have no construct as to how this stuff works or how it feels or how it's supposed to like. So it's not real. It's not real. It's just the only thing that's real are your sensations, your thoughts, because those you can feel, those you can sense, those are yours. So the only thing that matters in your little universe is you. Everything else is immaterial. It doesn't matter if you can see it. It makes no difference to you. It's nothing. It's sort of like if you were a god. If you were a god with that omnipotence and that kind of power, everything you see around you is not of godlike. The rest of existence is not of godlike stature for you to interact with. It's beneath you. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You see these old what are they? What movies? You know those movies with the old Greeks there, the Titans and the Olympians. You know what I'm talking about?
I know what
Like,
you're talking about.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Like the reason why, first off, screw the cinema. In actual mythology, the reason why the gods abused human beings, and they did, humans were playthings for gods, is because they couldn't relate to them. They aren't gods. They're not. We're squishy little stupid monkey rodents. You know what I mean to them. You know what I mean. So why wouldn't you abuse it? Why
Yeah,
wouldn't you step on an anthill? And not that you should. I wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. But little kids do this stuff. They can't relate to the size of the ant. It doesn't compute. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like looking at an ant. Like,
right.
yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. So when you don't take so coming back to the full thing, when you don't take responsibility, this is the type of thinking and corrosive of being is produced from that. Like, I'm not taking responsibility because it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't exist. There's no consequences because it's immaterial. That's beneath me. And then that gets into a dangerous
Right.
place when you're dealing with other human beings, when you're hurting other life forms and they don't matter to you. They don't. Now you cross into from sociopathology to psychopathology, and that's why. And
Right.
I'm not saying that if you don't take responsibility, you become a psycho, but it's psycho-esque. it's a little
Well, it's
psycho-esque.
neuroses, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like a lot of the times when we do start creating our reality like that, I mean, a lot of the times, and this is what people do, is when we avoid accountability, we start warping around reality around us so that because our mind's number one goal is to not let us, our ego's number one goal is to not see ourselves as the villain in our own story.
Right. Good
And so
point.
our minds, without self-awareness, our minds will try to warp what we're going through and try to save us from looking at the consequences of our actions and the ripples that leaves. And it'll try to justify why we do what we do.
That's a good point. That's
That's
a
one of the reasons yeah, I think that's, thank you.
that's a really good. I like that. As a matter of fact, I'm writing that down. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I like how you put that. Good. That's good.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on this. I mean, I see so many people who are just lost in their suffering, and it's because they refuse to look in the mirror and acknowledge the part they're playing. And it's because there's you look at the seven deadly sins and the seven virtues. This is a part of my little research project.
Yep.
That it's like the sins are the ego, and it's not a bad thing. We look at sin as such a horrible thing. I'm not saying sin. Please
Right,
do
right, right,
not take this as that. You need a healthy amount of pride. You need a healthy amount of desire. But too much of it, and you become tyrannical. Too
right.
little of it, and you become a shell of a person.
That's yeah, yep, exactly, exactly. I just want to jump on what you said because this is beautiful. People have a problem like seeing themselves as the villain. This I wrote this down. I'm gonna put a special section in the new Academy on Ashla Nights about this. This is a great point Mike makes. Very few of us can, we sit in our chairs and we drive in our cars, we sit at our desks, we walk, we jog, we do some type of, singular activity where we're in our thoughts and we're daydreaming. We are daydreaming. We are creating new worlds of possibility. You're a
Yeah.
billionaire, you're a millionaire, you're married to 15 Playboy, whatever. You're a movie star, whatever it is, right? We are we are creatures that see ourselves successful and profitable and just reaping all the good things that all the physical things that life has to offer. We're celebrating and reveling in that. All of our daydreams, from the smallest 30-second daydream while you're cooking dinner to the most insane daydream when you're on the treadmill, or what some people even daydream when they're having sex with their significant others. Like people are in their head. They're in their head, and very few of
Yeah.
them ever see themselves. Now, the ones that do see themselves as a villain, that's an interesting thing. That's a whole different thing, and we'll get into that in a minute. But very few people can see themselves as the bad guy or girl. Very few people can
Yeah.
imagine themselves dying. When you daydream and you play out scenarios, very few times is it you. And when you do it, it's such a moment of suffering. It's such a moment of sadness that you have to stop and say, okay, this is I don't want to tempt fate. I don't want karma coming my way. We have such an
Right.
aversion to suffering and pain. Pain hurts, yes. Physically, we associate emotional and spiritual, any kind of suffering, pain, and loss with physical suffering, pain, and loss. And I think that this comes from, you ready for this? They say people who get high for the first time, who experience that first, like, oh my God, this is amazing. Why did I wait so long to try this out? This is the greatest thing. There's a moment where you have this unnatural moment of euphoric pleasure and relaxation
Yeah.
that is indescribable, right? But you might have it again when you try it for the second time, and you might have it for the third time, but at some point, you never have that kind of high ever again. You still get high,
Yeah.
but you never have that first high. And the reason why people keep getting high is because they're chasing that first feeling. And this is the same exact thing. The same exact thing.
Chasing the dragon.
Because for the first 5 to 7 years, most of us had the most blissful experience. We had warmth, we had crib, we had toys, we had old people like playing with us and putting us on our lap. We were at parks. We
Food
had
on demand.
right. I was fed whenever I cried. I grew up happy. I grew up happy. And at some point, all that ended. All that ended. And it ends for a whole plethora of reasons. Sometimes it's because of your parents. Sometimes it's because you're just growing out of it. Sometimes, you're a cautionary tale of the environment you grow in and you grow up too fast. And whatever it is, there's a point where whether it's we ourselves who take ourselves away from it because of some trauma or some experience, or it gets ripped away from us because it's time to grow up. It's somebody coming in and selling all your toys because you have too many of them. Somebody coming in and telling you you're going to go to a different school and you're leaving all your friends. Somebody telling you that no, you can't have that cake. You had too much cake, but I love cake, and why can't I have this cake? You can't have any cake. You have to eat these Brussels sprouts. You have to do this. You have to brush your teeth. You have to. At some point, you start to become someone's kid, and you start to be managed, and someone has control over you, and you never feel that sense of freedom and omnipotence that you did when you were first brought onto this planet. And that's why
Well
I think,
said.
right? And that's why I think inherently at the bottom line, there's a lot of isms and is that support this. Like you'd said, Mike, there's a whole book of neuroses out there that support it. But the number one, I believe, the number one fundamental support beam is people are chasing that first high as a human being. And it was such a blissful state that they cannot imagine any kind of pain or suffering. That's why people have a hard time dealing with dealing with stuff because at some point we did experience this. They say, we can breathe underwater if we just remembered. Now, there's truth to that. The United States Navy has a fluid that lets you, it was in a bunch of movies, and they actually have it. I don't know if they still use it, but we have it. It's breathable fluid. You can put you and for deep sea diving, right? Unless you're
Yeah.
taught how to do that, you're not going to remember. You're not going to remember.
No.
All you know is that it happened one day that I was in a womb with embryonic fluid breathing. So it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. So the thing is, people today, I know I can't. I have a tough time when I have my moments in my head. Like I think of all kinds of crazy, and then when I start to be like the protagonist in the story, I shut that shit down real fast because I don't see myself as the villain. I see myself as a
Right.
savior, a comforter, a provider, a helper, a warrior, whatever it is. Like I see myself protecting, a protector, a champion for those who can't, whatever. I don't see myself as the
Right.
Sith, as the dark side. And when I see myself, for Halloween, I dressed up years ago as a Sith Lord, and it made me sick to my stomach because it was really good, and I was kind of digging it, and I was like, "This is wrong. this is wrong."
References, right?
You
References.
know what I mean? Like, and then instead of saying
Yeah.
just have fun with it, just have fun with it. Like step out of your comfort zone and leave your ego over there and adopt a new one. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because I have been sensitized to what I think is good and right and safe and protective and moral and ethical and character based and all that other because I don't remember it, all of it, but when I first came on this planet, that's how I was taught. I was taught like or I wasn't taught per se, but the stimuli I experienced supported all this. And at some point it didn't anymore because I was no longer lap material. I was no longer old people on the
Right.
lap material. You know what I mean? So now I'm an annoying kid. But anyway, go ahead, Mike. It's all yours.
Well, I'm not going to lie. Some of the things you brought up here, I have one of my foundations of my personal philosophy of how we work as people and where we struggle. You've made me start looking at it at a different light. So there's a
Cool.
psychologist known as Donald Winnicott, and he came out with the theory that there is within all of us we have the authentic self and the ideal self. I believe that was the psychologist. And within the gap, depending on how much your ideal self is away from your true self, is where the gap of your self esteem and confidence lies. And so you were
Hmm.
talking about how people drive around, everyone's in their heads creating these elaborate, I'm going to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if that's another place where suffering happens is there's this gap between what they believe they deserve and where they're actually at. I mean, I was guilty of this for most of my adult life, where I was constantly like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to make all this money. And I'm so busy looking at the top of the mountain, I realize I got Mount Everest in front of me.
Yep.
And I'm just trying to get there in 4 or 5 steps. And so many of us get
Right.
caught up. I mean, this is suffering, right?
Right.
It is the gap between what reality is and what we understand it to be.
That's a good point.
And I wonder, yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on this because I mean, I see so many people struggle with this. I have so many friends that want to better their lives, but they don't even know where to begin. But it's because they're so focused on the long term goals,
Right.
they don't see all the little habits and behaviors that need to be developed to become that person.
Right. 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 Right.
Because it's more than just getting a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
You gotta cultivate the character and the willpower and put in the work. I mean, we're doing this podcast. It's like I go to school full time. I work a full time job. I got 10 hours of commuting a week,
Yeah.
and I'm doing this podcast. I'm pushing 90, 100 hours a week, and I'm cool with that. But also, I didn't get here just because one day I'm like, I want to do all this. It took steady progress and
Yeah.
slowly integrating things into my life.
Yep. 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 Now you asked me a question. I'm sorry. What was that again? You said I want to get your opinion on
Oh, you're fine.
what.
Yeah, when it comes to this concept of how a big part of suffering is when our internal
Got.
perception, that whole our brain and eyes
I got you.
seeing reality, yeah, the gap between that and reality.
So let me just write that down so I don't forget that. Suffering. Okay, suffering. Okay. To answer that question, let me explain a little bit about how I teach at Ashla. This will illuminate what I'm trying to say about suffering. There's a difference between, oh my God, the world is upside down right now. Oh, despair, oh, despair. And then there's, the world is upside down right now. Okay, let's roll up our sleeves and figure out how we can mitigate, its impact on us. So one is they're both acknowledging the reality, but one is despair and worry, and the other one is acceptance and preparedness, right? That's how I look at the dark side, and that's how I look at the shadow of suffering. Okay? When most Jedi talk about balance, oh, the universe wants balance. The universe wants this, and the construct of life needs this, and the force requires this. Okay, I don't argue with people's interpretation. Okay, I would say you have to understand something about science. Nowhere in any scientific discipline, from anthropology to medical to quantum to you name it, biology, whatever ology you can think of, there is no such thing as balance. This is the biggest misconception in Jedi training. Even the Jedi themselves got this wrong. And they have amended this in much of the fiction past the original fiction that probably led you here to this path. Okay? Because they realize that there is no such, first of all, Einstein said there are no straight lines in the universe. Now, let's look at that quote. What does he mean by that quote? Well, because of the theory of relativity, right? Gravity makes it impossible for straight lines to exist because of gravity wells. So there are no straight lines, right? There are no straight lines in the universe, except for those we create, we plot. And this is the same exact thing. There is no such thing. This is my opinion only, okay? There is no such thing, in my opinion, of perfect balance. There is harmony, but even harmony is not balanced. Okay? Harmony consists of melody. It consists of so many other things that come together to make it harmonious. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say in here, like a circle. You have different parts that make up a circle. You have different parts that make up all the shapes: circles, circumference, diameter, radius. All these things come together and they produce a circle. This is the same exact thing. So nothing is balance is not a static state of reality. It is something, or harmony is not a static state of reality. It comes together through the commingling of many things. And those things could be, the balance could be 80-20, 70-30, 60-40, whatever it is, there's a toggling. There's a natural toggling between light and dark, a natural toggling between, gravity and anti-gravity, so on and so forth, energy and electromagnetic energy. There's a natural ebb and flow. The ocean rises and lowers, rises and lowers, rises and lowers, because the ocean is not a static state of straight, perfect, like, it moves. This is the ocean is an example of balance, ups and downs, ins and outs, round and round and round and round, a perfect symmetry of movement. That symmetry comes from different elements, not just a static, not just something that exists and is perfectly as a flat plane. That's not the case, right? So when we talk about the shadows of suffering, loss, attachment, these are things that are enemies to the Jedi ideology if they are internalized and not released. They become part of the character. Okay? We're going to experience these things because we're human beings. We're going to have pride. We're going to have moments of selfishness. We're going to have moments of selflessness. We're going to have moment of fear. We're going to have moment of strength and nobility. And we're going to have our embarrassing moments. We're going to get caught in untruths, and when we're trying to do the right thing. We're gonna these bad things happen. Suffering is the result of the truth that bad thing happened. So
Okay.
we need to stop being fearful of feeling bad things. We need to embrace it. No, I don't want to say
Yes.
we need to embrace it, but we need to accept that this is. Listen, I'm going to wake up and here's a better. Mike, you used to work in security, right? Or do you currently work in security?
No, I work in government contracting. I
Say, okay,
can't say what I do, but I do
you know
this.
what?
Yeah.
That's a better example. You wake up in the morning, all right, and as soon as the alarm goes off, you open your eyes, and I used to be an office guy too. I look at the ceiling and I'm like, here we go, right? You get up,
Yep.
you kind of, find your shoes, you find your slippers, you get in the shower. As soon as that water hits, now you're committed. Now the day is on, right? The day is on. You do your routine, you get in the car, you get to work, and you just know it's going to be a day. You know that someone's going to call you up and ask for those TPS reports. You know
Right, right, right.
somebody's going to take your stapler. You know what I mean? Someone's going to have you in a meeting and talking up your ear. Somebody in traffic's going to piss you off. Your girlfriend might say something sideways to you on the wrong day at the wrong morning. She didn't mean to, but she just got you in a bad something.
Right,
The
right, right.
suffering is inevitable. It is the exhaust from the engine of life. It is going to happen. So stop trying to avoid it and just live. And just when it happens,
Yes.
take it as the lesson that it is. What is the lesson of a good person? The lesson of a good person is the bad person and suffering. Like, it's gonna happen. You're gonna trip. You're gonna stub your toe. Someone in the drive-through is gonna piss you off. You're gonna get the wrong order. You're gonna lose your at least 2 or 3 times in the course of a day. So, and we get upset.
One thing I want to add to what you're saying, one thing I just have to add to what you're saying, because this is so big, and it's when you do go through these hardships, when you do have these bad days, when you have any type of suffering in your life, Embrace those
Yeah,
feelings, embrace those emotions, because that's how you release the charge. Emotions are
exactly.
energy. I don't care what anybody says. And when
Exactly.
that stuff gets compounded, that's when it goes into your own shadow. And we'll go over shadow work in another episode, but that shadow, that energy will go elsewhere out of you and towards you. And if you do not process your emotions, you do not process the bad things that happen in your life, that is what creates the biggest layers of preference and insecurity and will restrict you from living a whole and fulfilling life.
I'm going to tell you something. Master Bane learned you good. Master Bane learned you good because it's exactly, I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly what it is. So how you asked the question, how can we mitigate that suffering? How you can't stop the suffering. What was it that Shmi Skywalker said to Anakin? You can't stop the change. It's gonna happen. All you can do is just turn into it as best you can, like a skid, or like you're on the ice. You just mitigate and turn into it and control your descent. When you are
Look at
in,
Buffalo. Look at Buffalo. Buffalo, when a storm comes, the buffalo don't run from the storm because the storm will just follow them. The buffalo run towards the storm and through the storm because they know the fastest way and the way to get the least wet and the least cold is to move through that storm as it's coming at them and not have it trailing on top of them as they're trying to escape it.
I did not know that, but that's exactly where I was going with it. Yep, exactly. Bingo. And then after you
Sorry
get
for
through,
interrupting there.
no, that's exactly where I was going to go with it. I mean, I wasn't going to use that example, but that's exactly the point I was trying to make. The best thing you can do, my followers, my Padawans, the best thing you can do that you can do as a Jedi, let look, you're going to skid. Go into the skid, control your descent, control your rate. When it's all over, release it, process it. Okay, this person pissed me off. This person ate my lunch. This person took my stapler. This person, like, the TP, whatever it is, you're going to get mad. Get mad. Have that moment. Have that. Exercise that. Exercise that emotion and then release
Feel
it.
that anger.
Feel that anger. Let it go. Because if you hold on to it or if you try to avoid it, all you're going to do is stack it and stack it and stack it and stack it. And when you do fall,
Man.
it's epic. It's epic. So don't stack it. So go ahead. I'm all yours, Mike.
No, that was beautifully said. There's one last thing I want to touch on in the talk of suffering,
Yep.
and it's karma. So
Yep.
everyone thinks of karma as I do bad in the world will do bad to me.
Right.
And I have come to really adjust my opinion of karma as the state of our minds. Look at the state of your mind. Your karma is your accrued emotions that you never expressed, now retaliating in your mind.
Hmm.
The poor choices you made,
Yep.
the horrible situations. It's our minds are our karma, and the only way to process that, I one of my other mentors that I have worked with has brought up how the mind, when we go through things in life, when our mind's going crazy, saying all these horrible things, let it. We are not our
Yep.
thoughts, but it is almost like a wound, getting all the disgusting stuff out of it, all the infection that builds. You gotta take care of it, but you gotta let it breathe. You gotta let the wound go through the
Agreed.
emotions because that's what your thoughts are. It's all this pressure trying to come out of the pressure cooker, and you gotta let it do its thing, and you don't identify with it. We are so lost in identifying with our minds. Our minds are not us. We are the observer of our
Right.
minds.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. Absolutely. Now, someone hit me up and they were asking me, did you mean that a Jedi should not have harmony? No, that's not what I mean. A Jedi should strive for harmony. I'm talking about balance. A Jedi has to, in my opinion, a Jedi has to accept that you are not the chosen one. Okay, you're not Anakin Skywalker. You're not here to bring balance to the Force. Okay, that's not your job. Even God doesn't have.
Yeah,
God has not balanced the universe yet. Well, maybe he had. Maybe he or she has, and we only see an eighth of an eighth of an eighth of a quarter of an eighth of reality. If we were to look at the full tapestry of creation, then we probably might say, "Oh, okay, that's balance. I got you. All right." But we don't have. We're not on that level. We're on the level of humankind on this earth, and as things stand, Don't take my word for it. Stop, use your brain, and look at existence as it is. Find don't This is not a question, this is not an assignment. Challenge yourself. Try to find something in existence that's perfectly 50, 1 to 1, 50-50, whatever it is.
All the time. Yeah.
Unless it's created by a human being, unless it's fabricated, unless it's theorized, unless it's a theorem, unless it's some kind of math, it doesn't exist. There's
Wow.
nothing in this universe, in this physical construct, that is perfect measurements. Oh, the pyramids, we made those. Okay? We made that. I'm talking about, oh, the sphere of a planet. The sphere of a planet, again, is relative to its circumference and radius and its diameter. That doesn't you that's not, no. Nothing is defined as far as measurements. In that is the harmony of existence, I believe. That's the harmony. Everything working with each other to produce a reality that is harmonious. Like
Yeah.
when you walk in nature and you look at the trees and you look at the flowers and you look at all the foliage and all the flora and fauna and all that stuff, everything seems to be in sync. The grass and the soil and the roots and the trunks of the trees and the branches, and everything is harmonious. How
Wow.
many people have walked through it and have that moment in your life where you're like, oh my God, it's just beautiful out here. It just feels perfect. Nothing's perfectly measured against each other. Everything is different in size and in stature, yet it seems to be harmonious. And that's the truth of the Jedi code in front of you. The proof is your existence around you. The imperfection, that's what it is.
Well, and the more you step out, the more you can see it. I
The
mean,
more
look at a
right
forest, right? Forest fires are horrible, but what is the point of a forest fire? Why do
for
forest
re-
fires happen? Because all the undergrowth takes over,
that's
and
right.
then a lightning strikes, and it burns, and it's horrible. Homes burning down, but no, it's the natural course of nature. The forest must burn down so it may grow more lush than before.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. And it doesn't grow in perfect, squares of, whatever. It just
Yeah.
grows. Exactly. It just grows.
Well,
So,
and one thing I want to touch on with what you were saying there is don't try to be a superhero. Don't try to think you're the one who's going to bring balance into the world.
right.
Your mission in your life is to bring balance to your own life. And that means whatever life throws at you, you deal with it to the best of your ability because you're human. We are all flawed. And the more you can accept that, the more you can roll with the punches. The only thing you have control over virtually is yourself and how you respond to situations.
And I,
And that is where your power lies.
and I'll add to that. The man is 100% correct. And if I have to add to that, that is the true example right there. Your job is to be an example of what he just said. Our job as Jedi is to be examples of betterment. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Mike's not perfect. Master Bane's not perfect. But we are examples of effort, of the constant daily effort to be better than we were yesterday. And that's
Yes.
that.
That's one of
Well,
the biggest things I learned. Like I said, I spent my life trying to be the hero. I thought I could show people the way by trying to show them the way. No, the only way you can change other people is by being a role model and setting an example.
agreed. Agreed. Good show.
Hey, appreciate you. One last thing, I know we're going to wrap this episode up here soon.
Yep. I'm all set. Go right ahead. Yep. Do your thing.
So I know Justin loves to give everybody exercises and journaling prompts. I'm going to do a little bit of both at the same time. I want you to take time to reflect. Where in life are you suffering? What part of your life do you feel trapped, stuck, or just inauthentic? Reflect on this. Ask, what is my part in my own suffering? What need does this situation fulfill? What can I do to better let go and embrace the unknown and reclaim my power in this part of my life?
Cool.
Boom.
All right. Mike, it was a pleasure. I had a great time. I can't wait to do this again with you, man.
Yeah, no, this was great. I love the conversation. You
Yeah,
gave me a lot to think about there.
same here, brother.
Oh, I love philosophy.
I do too. All right, man. You have a good night, my friend.
Hey, you as well. Great talking with you.
You too, Mike. Have a good night. And bye, everyone.
You too.
Bye bye.
Everyone, thank you for joining us today on the new Ashla Podcast. I hope you learned some new things and had some good food for thought from these conversations we had. God loose 'em.